You're listening to Today at Museum of the Bible with Chief Curatorial Officer Dr. Jeff Kloa. These exclusive conversations with authors, scholars, and leaders visiting the museum focus on how they are currently engaging with the Bible in their lives and work.
Welcome to Today at Museum of the Bible. I'm Charlotte Clay, and I'm here today with Dr. Jeffrey Kloa and Dr. Orit Shamir. Dr. Shamir, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Dr. Shamir holds a PhD from Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and she is the head of the International Exhibitions Department and textile researcher for the Israel Antiquities Authority.
Welcome back, Orit. I know this is, your third time to Museum of the Bible? Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm very happy to meet the professional staff here, and I enjoy working with you and plan our future exhibitions.
Wonderful. Thank you. So maybe a little background. What is the Israel Antiquities Authority? Sounds very impressive.
Okay, I joined the Israel Antiquities Authority 30 years ago.
Wow.
And in 1988, we became an authority. And we have something like 600 workers, archaeologists, conservators, researchers, and we are responsible for the archaeological sites in Israel. And also we are responsible of 350 archaeological exhibits and museums, because we would like to display all the artifacts to the public, and we don't want to keep them at our storerooms.
Right. I've been in one of your basements. You have a lot of stuff.
We have 2 million objects.
2 million.
And we don't have any dull moment. Every day is an exciting day because we have so many salvage rescue excavations because of the development of the country, new roads, new buildings. So we have many excavations per month, something like 40, 50 excavations. And sometimes we find at one excavation 4,000 intact vessels from the Middle Bronze period, because it was a burial site. And it is only one example. So we have so many new artifacts from the last few years of excavations. Also, of course, we have scientist excavations or excavations because of touristic sites. For example, the Lod mosaics that we opened to the public recently.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Can you tell us about that site that you opened recently?
Yes, years ago, I was the assistant of the director. There was a rescue excavations at Lod. Lod is nearby our airport, and the excavators found beautiful mosaics from the Roman period with animals. So we stopped the excavations. We had to change the path of the road. We found our donor, Shelby White. She's from the United States. She donated more than 10 million shekels in order to open this site to the public as a visitor center, and the mosaics are exhibited there. During the years that we prepared the building, these mosaics traveled to the United States, the Hermitage, to Britain, and the mosaics visited so many countries all over the world. And the site is close to the airport. So people who arrive to visit Israel or they leave Israel, they come and visit the site, of course, with interactive and films about the discovery of this mosaic. So I call our audience to find the website of Lod mosaics and to see their beauty.
Yeah, wonderful. So you find things at airports, you find things inside prisons. I mean, you got stuff everywhere, right?
Yes, you're right. And also we have this system that we exhibit these archaeological finds at hotels, at the airport, at buildings, even at the hospitals, because when you enter the hospital, sometimes you have to wait few hours. So you have time to look and see the exhibition about medicine in antiquity or the finds that were excavated at the salvage rescue excavations at this hospital.
We do not have that at hospitals here.
Not at hospitals here, no.
But that's amazing. That's so central to Israel, really, that you're constantly finding things and able to share them with the public. It's amazing.
Yeah, and also we exhibit them at schools. Yeah. So the children even can touch the artifacts and they can feel the oil lamp or the coin that was discovered in their vicinity. And it started at the kibbutz, as these communities of people who lived together when they irrigated their land 60, 70 years ago, and they collected the archaeological artifacts, so they exhibited to the public. Some of them are even recognized museums, so people can come and visit them. And most of them are free of charge, so people can enjoy without paying money.
Now, your area of research is textiles, right? So, I mean, we don't think of textiles like, I'm sure my sport coat here is not going to last 2,000 years, right?
Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah. How much material is there, and kind of what's your area of research? Just tell us about textiles.
Okay, so because of the dry climate in Israel, we have Judea desert not far away from Jerusalem, the vicinity of the Dead Sea, and also the Negev, the Arava, the southern part of Israel, with the Nabatean who used to take their spices and perfumes with the camel caravans. Thousands of textiles were found at these areas with the dry climate. And for example, the earliest textiles that we have are dated to the Neolithic period, from the 6th millennium BC. And the textiles are made of linen, and linen is still in fashion today.
Yeah.
People
wearing it
still
I have a linen shirt on right now, yeah.
Yeah, right. So people still use linen today. Even after 10,000 years, this material is fashionable. And later on, we have textiles from the Chalcolithic period, the 4th millennium BC. Also, the textiles are made of linen. And in antiquity, people used linen before they used wool, because the fibers of wool were very short. You couldn't use them 6,000 years ago.
Because they had to breed the sheep to...
Exactly,
yes,
exactly.
okay.
You're right, because later on, the Middle Bronze period, at Jericho, 4,000 years ago, they find wool textiles. And now we have another new material who entered to the life of the southern Levant, because in Egypt they used linen for thousands of years because wool was not pure. And in Israel, from the Middle Bronze period, they started to use wool. Wool absorbed very well the dyes, in contrast to linen that you cannot dye. But wool, for example, the textiles from the Roman period that are exhibited at your exhibition at the Bible Museum, and they are made of wool, they are colorful, and people can come and see them here. And the dyes were preserved for 2,000 years, and this is amazing, because sometimes when you buy a shirt today, after a few times it is faded. Because in antiquity they used to dye the fibers, not the threads and not the shirt, the fibers. So the color, the dye penetrated into the fibers. So for thousands of years the textiles were not faded at all.
That is so interesting. So today they're just dyeing the threads,
You're
not
right.
the fibers themselves.
Today they dye the textiles.
Okay.
They even don't dye the threads as they did during the early Islamic period at the 7th century CE. But today they just dye the...
Don't make things like they used to, right?
Okay. That's so interesting. And is it fair to say that only wealthy people would have had clothing that was dyed?
You're right. Yes, because dye is connected to rich people, because to dye the textiles, it cost a lot of money. But during the Roman period, the 1st, 2nd century CE, the land of Israel, the Jewish population, the Roman population, they used to wear a tunic which was undyed, decorated with 2 bands descending from the neck opening. But if you are rich, you can buy a tunic that is completely dyed. And above the tunic, they used to wear the mantle. So it depends if you have the money to buy a textile which is dyed or not. And if you are very rich, you buy textile which is dyed with the royal purple, the most expensive dye, which was extracted from sea snails from the Mediterranean Sea. You could buy these textiles, but these textiles, of course, they are very rare in the land of Israel. We have 3 textiles that are dyed with sea snails, with murex from Timnah, the southern part of Israel, from the 11th century BC, from the period of David and Solomon, and which are mentioned in the Bible, of course, and later on few examples from Masada and Muraba'at. These are also caves with some these rare textiles. And of course, the world was very excited from this discovery because it is very rare all over the world.
Well, so you mentioned, and you gave a little talk to our staff here yesterday about Timnah. Tell us what that site is, some of the textiles there, and kind of what the biblical link is to Timnah.
Timnah is a huge park in the southern part of Israel, 20 kilometers north of Eilat. And the site is a place of the mines of the copper and also the production of the vessels that were used in the first temple. So the site began at the Chalcolithic period. So even at the 4th millennium BC, they could produce vessels or artifacts that are made of copper. Later on, during the Egyptian rule, the 13th century BC, the Egyptians used this site in order to produce copper, and also they had a temple to Hathor, the goddess of the miners. And at Hathor temple, we found colorful textiles. Maybe they belonged to the tent that covered the temple. But later on, the 11th century BC, the period of David and Solomon, the tribes who lived at this area extracted the copper and used it for trade and to exchange with other artifacts. And they were rich because we find textiles that were dyed with purple and dyed with red and blue dyes. So it is very important site connected to this museum of the Bible, and it is written in the Bible that the Edomite were under the rule of King David, who of course probably enjoyed from the copper that was produced in this region.
He was probably wearing purple and red.
And
I can imagine.
Found his
But King
copper
Solomon,
dishes,
yes,
right?
Solomon,
Yeah.
and we know from the Bible that King Solomon was very rich.
Yes.
And he probably used these textiles, which were very colorful.
So it's likely that the vessels for the first temple, Solomon's temple, were made from copper from Timnah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably this is the story of
pretty,
the temple, and of course, in order to build the temple, they used copper from
of course,
Timnah and not from other sources.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating. Fascinating. So is this the, is that the most kind of exciting discovery of your work in archaeology, or what would you consider kind of the most?
Timnah is really a very rare discovery of the textiles because these are the biggest hoard of textiles that were found during the Iron Age. But of course we have many more discoveries, and I jump just to give you an example that a few months ago we excavated a site which is called Nahal Omer at the Arava Valley. It is the border between Egypt and Israel. And the early Islamic period, we found more than 1,000 textiles. And we talked about linen and wool, but during this period, the early Islamic period, the 7th century CE, we have two new materials that imported to the land of Israel. One is cotton, and we still use cotton today, of course, and the second one is silk. So, of course, we talk about trade of cotton textiles that arrived from India, the source of cotton, and silk, maybe from China and from other places. And also, these textiles belong to a site with a mosque and with houses, and they were responsible to this trade. And the textiles are very colorful. And could you imagine that you sit 2 weeks at the same place, at the garbage, at the waste dump, and you find 1,000 textiles, and the textiles are very, even if you don't understand textiles, they are very colorful. They are dyed in a Ika technique that is still in use in India and Uzbekistan, and the textiles are very colorful.
Amazing.
Do you ever get to wear them? No, I shouldn't ask you.
Yeah. I mean, in Uzbekistan, I visited recently Uzbekistan. They still produce Ika textiles, which are very colorful, and they use them today. And if you look on the websites of textiles, of garments, you can still see that ikat is very fashionable today.
Oh, yeah.
So, because the idea is that when you dye the threads, they have different colors. So the garment is very colorful.
It's almost like sophisticated tie-dye, would you say?
Exactly.
I'm trying to explain it to Jeff.
Exactly.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's beautiful. That's so interesting. Wow.
So and in order to connect the people to the textiles in antiquity, we give them examples that the same techniques, the same materials for thousands of years, we use them today.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, we are inspired from these textiles.
Well, you've also done some work on burial shrouds, of course, made of textiles, and you recently published a paper on a recently discovered burial shroud.
You're right. Yes, you're right. Because years ago, there was a robbery at one of the burials in Jerusalem. The burial is dated to the Second Temple period, 1st century CE, and the excavators entered the burial after the robbery was done, and they excavated a burial, and they found textiles, which is very rare in Jerusalem. But because the tomb was closed and the humidity didn't enter and light didn't enter to the tomb, so the textiles were preserved. Of course, they are carbonized, and they are in very bad condition and preservation, but we still could make the research. And the textiles of the shroud, it was a shroud of a man. The man at the 1st century CE was ill in leprosy and tuberculosis. And because they didn't want to take his bones for the second burial, the ossuary, and you have here at the museums, the Bible Museum ossuary that are displayed for the public, they were afraid to take his bones for the second burial in the ossuary. So they left him in the tomb with the shroud. And when the archaeologists entered the tomb, they found the shroud, which is made of wool. But usually shrouds are made of linen. You know about the Turin shroud. The story of the Turin shroud was exhibited at the Bible Museum recently, and it caught the attention of the public because the story is very interesting. It is written at the Talmudic sources that the burial of the Jewish population was in linen, and suddenly we find the high socio-economic level of Jewish population who were buried at these tombs, that they use wool, and the wool was imported from Greece or from Italy. It was not made in the land of Israel because of the spin direction. This is the indication that it was imported. And because
spin direction of the threads.
This family was very rich, they could import the shroud. It was not secondary hand, as usually we find, for example, at the cave of the letters, they were under the conditions of the army siege. So at the second century CE, they took the mantles and they took the tunics and they used them as secondary use as shrouds. But here, this shroud was without any repairs, any patches. It looks like a new garment. And also, the person who was buried there, his hair was still shining after 2,000 years because they, in order to prepare his body, in order to prepare the deceased for the burial, they cut his hair, but they put also olive oil on his hair.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in contra to Masada, the people in Masada, they were under the conditions of the siege, they had lice in their hair. So through the hair, you can understand which food did they eat. So in Jerusalem, the high socioeconomic population of the Jewish of the Second Temple period, they used to eat very good food.
Right, Mediterranean diet makes your hair shine, even if you have leprosy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's amazing.
Good tip.
How can you tell, or was it just you had some writings to know how he died?
We know how did he die because we have anthropologists who made the research. He died from leprosy, but the combination of leprosy and tuberculosis together killed him.
Unlucky guy.
Because you don't die. Usually people don't die from leprosy, but the combination killed him, unfortunately.
Wow. Always new things to understand, discover, and communicate through all these exhibits.
And also, because this textile is dated to the 1st century CE with carbon dating, so it immediately, the media asked questions, and they were curious because if we think that the Turin shroud is from the 1st century CE, from the period of Jesus, so we can compare the textiles. And the Turin shroud is made of linen. With more complicated weave than the linen textiles which were found in Israel, because this burial in Jerusalem is really an exceptional. But the other burials from this period, for example, at En Gedi, all the shrouds are made of linen. And the Turin shroud is also made of linen, but with more complicated technique. And people,
herringbone weave to it.
Yeah, exactly. And people are so curious about the Turin shroud because, some scholars think that it is dated to the medieval period, to the 13th century CE, and some think that it belongs to the 1st century CE, the period of Jesus who was in Israel.
So you actually know the answer, don't you? But you're not going to tell us, right?
That herringbone weave. Well, I'll say if people want to learn more about the Shroud of Turin exhibit that did happen at Museum of the Bible, you can just go to our website, museumofthebible.org, and check out the digital exhibition.
Great. So, Dr. Shamir, when people come to see the People of the Land exhibit from the Israel Antiquities Authority here at Museum of the Bible, which is a very large exhibit, right? What will they see?
So I entered yesterday to see what is the reaction of the visitors. And there are 600 artifacts from the Middle Bronze Age till the 2nd century CE, the Roman period. Some of the artifacts, they are not in the showcases, but you can see them without any disruption. And
they're not behind a glass or anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw the teenagers, and and of course with this selfie, so people can take photos, and it is very impressive. And I think this is one of the best exhibitions all over the world displaying the archaeology of the land of Israel. Because when you have such a mass of objects, it is not one or two, but it is a massive collection of objects, and these are the most important objects. Some of them are very important, and through these objects you can tell the story of the land of Israel. Of course, it is connected to the Bible, because some of the stories that are written in the Bible, you can see them at the exhibition. When you talk about Lachish from the 7th century BC, about the Assyria siege, you can see the artifacts that from this war, then they are exhibited here, so people can stand, they can read the Bible, and they can see the artifacts connected to this story.
Right there, yeah. It's one of my favorite displays is those arrowheads from Lachish and then the arrowheads from Jerusalem in 586. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? It's right there in front of you.
And it's the only place, I believe, that you can see this kind kind of artifacts from Israel from these biblical periods in the United States.
And also because it is a younger exhibition. I mean, it is modern, and people can walk and understand the story, and it gives you the feeling that you are staying in the land of Israel. And it also, we know it from our experience, that it also, because of the exhibition, people arrive and come and visit Israel.
Yes.
Yeah, it gets people excited and want to learn more about it. Yeah, it's very impressive. The ossuaries, like you mentioned, from the Roman period, and all kinds of I like to point people to the Baal and Asherah figurines, which you read in the prophets, and they're sitting right there in the case. Yeah, it's amazing.
And this morning, Jeff and me, we sat together to think about the future exhibitions that we are going to exhibit here, for example, Timna, other sites. What will be interesting to the public who is going to visit here?
So very exciting things to come.
Exactly. It won't be the last time Dr. Shamir is here, right?
Oh, that's wonderful. I would love to hear just what your maybe wish list, if you, not to make an Indiana Jones reference, but I'll go ahead. What would be your holy grail discovery that you hope to uncover or learn more about?
Okay, my expertise and my field of interest are the textiles. And of course, I would like to find more textiles from the early Islamic period at this site, and because this site raised many questions about the population who used to live there, and how is it possible that more than 1,000 years ago, people collected the garbage. They didn't leave the garbage at their homes, but they throw it in one space, and they left their houses clean. And for example, we find at this waste dump hair, we found papyrus, we found bones with camel bones with inscriptions and the word Allah.
So, really?
And at this place, at the desert, with these harsh conditions, how is it possible that they used to wear silk textiles, beautiful cotton textiles? And what did they do there? Do they take care for the people who arrived to visit Mecca and Medina, and the people who were Muslims and arrived to see Jerusalem? So we have so many questions about this site, and my dream is to continue and excavate and to find more textiles, and of course to exhibit the textiles to the public. Also, we work with schools of fashion, because we want the students to imitate these textiles, to prepare scarves, for example, with the same designs of Masada and from other sites, and to involve the young fashion students at these exhibitions, to make it more alive to the public.
I love that. I hope that's one of the exhibition ideas you discussed this morning with Jeff, because the fashion connection is so interesting, and it really also brings the people of the Bible to life in that deeper way, where you can really envision them wearing clothes and even the same exact clothes that we did in same fibers if they were dyed better. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Shamir. This was really fascinating, and we look forward to seeing you at the museum again very soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Today at Museum of the Bible.
C.S. Lewis's beloved classic, The Horse and His Boy, returns to Museum of the Bible's World Stage Theater this summer. Use code OPENING for 15% off opening weekend shows June 23rd to 25th. Get your tickets now at museumofthebible.org.